In 1866, Fyodor Dostoevsky unveiled a profound truth that continues to resonate today, illuminating why even the most brilliant minds can stumble into the gravest errors. He unearthed a psychological dynamic that might startle many modern thinkers. The sharper your intellect, the more adept you can become at weaving intricate webs of self-deception. His masterpiece, Crime and Punishment, wasn't merely a novel. It was a penetrating psychological exploration, an autopsy of the human spirit grappling with its own shadow. Dostoevsky didn't just tell a story. He cracked the code on how exceptional individuals can orchestrate their own downfall, not through ignorance, but through the ingenious architecture of their own twisted logic. Yet, here's a crucial insight that often goes unsaid in discussions of human psychology. The act itself, the crime, isn't what truly destroys them. It's the elaborate, self-serving justification that follows, a narrative carefully constructed to absolve the self. Consider Rodion Raskolnikov, a gifted university student who, through a labyrinth of reasoning, convinces himself that murder is not only permissible, but a necessary act for a superior intellect. Does this resonate in our modern world? Fast forward to 2019, and we witnessed Adam Newman, a charismatic entrepreneur, persuade himself that massive fraud was, in fact, an audacious leap towards elevating global consciousness. He transformed a straightforward office rental business into a 47 billion fantasy. Both men shared a fatal flaw. They were too brilliant for their own good, possessing an intelligence that, unchecked, became a formidable weapon against themselves. Machiavelli, with piercing clarity, recorded, "The prince who attempts to serve all masters serves none effectively." He bore witness to Borgia's power waning not from his acts of perceived cruelty, but from his relentless, indiscriminate generosity. In a mere few months, Borgia's allies grew emboldened, their demands escalating into the absurd. His generals now expected immediate compliance. Local leaders presumed his resources were infinite, and even former enemies, once bound by oaths of loyalty, felt entitled to his unending support. It dawned on Machiavelli that he wasn't witnessing a political strategy. He was seeing the devastating consequence of someone becoming so universally useful that they forfeited the profound capacity to be truly valuable to anyone. This pattern, meticulously documented, would become one of Machiavelli's most critical insights. When you are useful to everyone, you become expendable to everyone. But here is where the depth truly becomes profound, and it explains why even seemingly simple conversations can leave you utterly exhausted. Jung discovered that these remarkable minds naturally access what he termed the collective unconscious, that deeper shared reservoir of human experience and wisdom that most people never truly touch. You're not just processing individual information, you're intuitively grasping archetypal patterns, universal themes that connect all humanity. This is the availability paradox. The more perpetually accessible you make yourself, the more perpetually undervalued you become. Machiavelli understood this intuitively. Rarity doesn't just create desire, it fosters profound respect. Your time, your energy, your wisdom, these are not infinite resources. They are precious. What Machiavelli grasped through sheer observation, behavioral economics now confirms with scientific precision. Dr. Dan Ariely's groundbreaking research on scarcity and value perception powerfully validates these ancient insights. When resources, including your invaluable human assistance, are abundant and effortlessly accessible, a subtle yet destructive process unfolds. People unconsciously begin to devalue them. This phenomenon is precisely why I've identified what I call the service spiral from Machiavelli's work. It begins innocently. Capable, generous individuals offer help because they genuinely can. Empowered by this initial success, others request more, and the helpful person, driven by a desire to maintain harmony and relationships, says yes again. This cycle accelerates, gathering momentum until the helper finds themselves ensnared, trapped in a relentless system of endless obligation, their own needs and aspirations fading under the weight of others' demands. The individual ensnared in this relentless spiral experiences what I call the burden of indispensability, a paradoxical state where being incredibly useful to countless people strips them of their personal agency, their very freedom. They become, in essence, servants to their own extraordinary competence. And here's an even more unsettling truth, revealed through Machiavelli's keen observations. Those who become universally useful often operate not from a place of pure, selfless generosity, but from a deep-seated insecurity. But here's what makes this truly extraordinary. Jung discovered that symbolic consciousness allows you to access what he called prospective elements, your psyche's natural, almost prophetic ability to anticipate future psychological developments. You're not merely processing what is, you're sensing what wants to emerge, what is on the horizon of the soul. This is precisely why you might find yourself magnetically drawn to complex, layered storytelling that others find confusing, or to art and music that seems to speak directly to the deepest chambers of your soul. He saw that the more help someone extended, the less grateful the recipients became. His profound insights into human nature unveiled a stark reality. People assess benefits not by their true magnitude, but by the level of expectation they've developed. This wasn't a cynical worldview. It was a precise psychological observation. Machiavelli recognized what modern psychology now calls hedonic adaptation, our innate tendency to quickly adjust to new levels of service and support. Yesterday's extraordinary gesture swiftly becomes today's baseline expectation, a minimum requirement. Even more profoundly disturbing is what I term the resentment reversal. The unsettling truth that extensive, unending help can often cultivate hostility in its recipients. Machiavelli understood that excessive assistance creates a psychological burden. The universally helpful person inadvertently inflicts obligation anxiety on others. Feeling indebted, a subtle, often unconscious resentment begins to brew. We, as humans, inherently desire to feel competent, capable, and independent. Here's where many people become deeply uncomfortable. Yet Jung made a profound discovery about rare minds. They are inexplicably, courageously fascinated by what he called the shadow, the hidden, denied, and repressed aspects of human nature. If you possess this type of consciousness, you don't merely acknowledge that people have dark sides. You are genuinely, unflinchingly curious about the intricate psychological mechanisms that forge them. Machiavelli's keen analysis of political alliances illuminated a chilling reality. Even the most generous acts towards allies could ultimately morph them into adversaries. The natural progression is insidious. Gratitude curdles into guilt. Guilt festers into discomfort. And this discomfort ultimately ignites hostility towards the very source of their dependence. This unmasks the dark, uncomfortable truth about unlimited usefulness. It doesn't forge loyalty. It breeds deep-seated resentment in those who benefit from it. Drawing from Machiavelli's era and extrapolating his timeless wisdom to our modern world, I've discerned 4 distinct archetypes, 4 ways in which brilliant, capable individuals inadvertently dismantle their own power through indiscriminate helpfulness. This is why you might find yourself drawn to complex, morally ambiguous characters in stories, or to true crime, not for shock value, but for profound psychological insight. You explore taboo topics that others avoid, seeking to understand rather than simply condemn harmful behaviors. Jung called this psychological wholeness, the courageous integration of both light and shadow aspects of personality. While most people operate from psychological splitting, a simplistic good versus evil, right versus wrong, your mind has moved beyond these limited categories, embracing a more expansive truth. The challenge, of course, is that this shadow fascination often makes others deeply uncomfortable. They're still operating from what Jung called persona identification, completely identified with their socially acceptable mask, while unconsciously projecting their shadow onto others. If you've ever been called dark for asking questions others refuse to ask, let us know. You are not dark. You are simply striving for completeness. Yet, Jung discovered that this very shadow integration leads to the most isolating aspect of your rare consciousness. Carl Jung identified what he called the transcendent function, the psyche's natural, insistent drive toward wholeness and profound meaning. But what happens when your consciousness naturally operates from this transcendent perspective, while surrounded by people focused solely on surface-level survival and immediate gratification? This is what I call existential homesickness, and it's the fourth unmistakable sign of your rare mind. The most insidious aspect is that these attacks often come disguised as genuine concern or advice. You need to toughen up. The world will eat you alive. You're too trusting. You need to be more guarded. These statements, though seemingly benign, reveal the speaker's own unhealed emotional wounds while simultaneously attempting to dim the empath's precious light. Jung realized this was not conscious malice. It was the tragic manifestation of unconscious self-hatred, being projected outward onto someone who courageously represented what they could no longer access within themselves. Through his profound analytical work with empaths and their intricate relationships, Jung identified 4 distinct patterns of how people unconsciously attack empathic individuals for their authentic emotional expression. But here's the profound challenge Jung documented. While others are content with what he called collective adaptation, fitting into social roles and expectations, your psyche demands authentic self-realization, a deep, unwavering commitment to becoming who you truly are. You are not satisfied with shallow answers, because your mind requires genuine understanding, a truth that resonates with your very being. This existential orientation creates a unique form of loneliness that Jung termed psychological isolation. 3. What profound shift would occur if I chose to own this trait consciously, rather than denying or projecting it? This isn't an exercise in blame or shame. It is a powerful act of reclaiming your authentic power. Jung called these individuals cultural creatives, people whose psychological development anticipates the next magnificent stage of human evolution. The isolation intensifies because when you try to share these profound existential insights, others often respond with discomfort, or they attempt to redirect you to more practical matters. But Jung understood something crucial about this homesickness. It is a sacred compass guiding you towards your deepest truth. Type 4, the light dimmer. The most insidious and dangerous type Jung encountered were people who systematically worked to diminish an empath's confidence in their own innate gifts. They have disconnected from their own inner light so completely that another's radiance becomes unbearable, a painful reminder of what they've lost. These brightness reducers use subtle psychological manipulation to convince empaths that their natural empathy is a problem to be fixed, a flaw to be corrected, rather than a magnificent gift to be honored and cherished. You don't just notice when someone is being inauthentic. You can discern the specific defense mechanisms they're employing, the childhood wounds quietly driving their behavior, and the authentic self struggling to emerge from beneath their protective adaptations. Jung's entire analytical psychology was built on this very principle, that every symptom and behavior is a meaningful expression of deeper, often unconscious, psychological conflicts. But here lies Jung's brilliant breakthrough insight. These shadow traits weren't merely weaknesses to be overcome. They were, in fact, dormant sources of power, waiting to be reclaimed. Jung realized that his profound need for control, when integrated properly and consciously, transformed into his exceptional ability to lead, to innovate, and to structure groundbreaking ideas. His hunger for recognition, when acknowledged and channeled, became his relentless drive to make truly meaningful contributions to the world. But here's what makes this ability both extraordinary and utterly exhausting. While others accept social interactions at face value, your mind is processing multiple data streams simultaneously. Micro-expressions that subtly contradict spoken words, body language, eloquently revealing emotional states, vocal tonalities that betray inner conflicts, and behavioral patterns indicating unconscious motivations. Jung discovered that this heightened perceptual ability stems from what he called intuitive perception, your mind's extraordinary capacity to read the entire psychological field surrounding individuals. You're not just seeing the person, you're sensing their entire psychological ecosystem, a living, breathing landscape of their inner world. Modern therapeutic approaches, like narrative therapy and symbolic dream analysis, have beautifully validated Jung's insights. "I'm not like that," he protests. "I'm quiet. I prefer to stay in the background." But when Marcus digs deeper, a disquieting realization surfaces. He does want attention. He wants his innovative ideas to be heard. He wants recognition for his diligent work. But he has been systematically suppressing these very natural desires because he labeled them as bad or unacceptable. This is precisely where shadow integration begins. Instead of judging his need for attention, Marcus begins the courageous process of owning it. Yes, I want recognition. Yes, I want my voice to be heard. And that is perfectly okay. When Marcus integrates this previously rejected shadow trait, something profoundly powerful unfolds. He starts speaking up more confidently in meetings. He shares his ideas with greater conviction. He stops resenting Lisa and instead begins to learn from her natural boldness. Marcus discovers that his attention-seeking shadow, when consciously integrated, transforms into an authentic, effective leadership quality. You see the person beneath the mask, and Jung understood that this archaeological consciousness isn't a burden. It is a profound gift, allowing you to serve as a bridge between conscious and unconscious worlds, a truth-teller for the soul. But this leads to an even more complex, often misunderstood, aspect of your rare mind. Here's where your mind becomes truly incomprehensible to most others. Carl Jung discovered that the most psychologically mature individuals possess what he called paradoxical thinking, the extraordinary ability to hold seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously without needing to force them into simplistic, either divided by or categories. This is what I call both divided by and consciousness, and it represents a fundamental shift from the binary thinking that dominates ordinary mental processing. If you possess this rare mind, you don't just tolerate paradox, you recognize it as closer to the true, fluid nature of reality itself. 1. Identify the shadow trait. Clearly name the specific quality you've been denying, rejecting, or projecting onto others. But here's what makes this truly alien to most people. While others crave clear categories and simple answers, your mind naturally recognizes that life's most important truths exist in the creative tension between opposites. You understand that people can be simultaneously selfish and selfless, that behaviors can be both harmful and protective, that emotions can contain multiple contradictory elements, and that truth often emerges from the collision of opposing perspectives. If you're ready to protect your empathic nature, while serving only those who can truly receive it, affirm, "I choose conscious empathy over unconscious absorption." This involves learning to critically distinguish between genuine, constructive feedback that serves your individuation and projection-based attacks, designed solely to dim your authentic self-expression. Jung called this developing psychological discernment. If you've learned to distinguish between true feedback and projection-based attacks, proudly declare, "I know the difference between truth and shadow." When you express nuanced, paradoxical insights, others often respond with frustration or demands for you to pick a side. They're operating from what Jung called directed thinking, linear, logical, socially adapted cognition, while you're accessing non-directed thinking, associative, symbolic, and profoundly paradoxical. The challenge intensifies because paradoxical consciousness makes you see through the false simplicities that others desperately cling to. You recognize that most political positions contain partial truths and profound blind spots. You understand that psychological health requires integrating rather than eliminating negative traits. And you know that true wisdom often sounds like contradiction to those seeking only simple answers. The deepest truths simply cannot be captured in neat philosophical systems. If you've ever been told you're wishy-washy for seeing multiple sides, comment below. You think in spectrums, not absolutes. And Jung understood that paradoxical thinking isn't intellectual confusion. It's potent evidence of profound psychological sophistication. But this sophistication leads to one of the most challenging aspects of your rare consciousness. 3. She practiced conscious expression. Instead of subtly hiding her contributions or waiting to be noticed, she began to confidently and appropriately articulate her achievements and ideas in team settings. When you have truly embarked on the psychological journey toward wholeness, your mere presence activates dormant potentials in others, whether they consciously want it or not. Jung's famous quote echoes here. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when one personality carries this powerful transformational energy, while the other is deeply invested in staying exactly the same? If you possess this rare mind, you've probably noticed that your presence alone triggers unexpected, often powerful, responses. People either feel deeply drawn to you, as if recognizing a kindred spirit, or they become inexplicably uncomfortable, sensing a subtle challenge to their status quo. Casual conversations somehow become profound explorations of life's deepest questions. Others confide things to you they've never told anyone, drawn by your depth and non-judgment. Your insightful questions help people discover profound truths about themselves they never knew. Jung called this profound journey individuation, the lifelong process of becoming the unique, whole person you are truly meant to be. By fearlessly embracing all parts of yourself, both the light and the dark. This catalytic effect explains many of your confusing social experiences. Why some people are immediately drawn to your unique energy. Why others feel threatened by your penetrating questions and insights. Why casual relationships often become unexpectedly intense, and why you seem to bring out both the best and, sometimes, the worst in people. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. You're not trying to change anyone. You are simply being authentic to your individuated consciousness, radiating your truth. Jung profoundly emphasized that empaths need what he called vibrational sanctuary, relationships with others who genuinely appreciate, rather than resent, authentic emotional expression. Jung wrote, "The empath cannot thrive in emotional isolation, yet they cannot survive in relationships with those who attack their authenticity. They must create conscious community with others who celebrate rather than suppress emotional aliveness. You are simply mirroring back their own incredible potential." The challenge, of course, is that this transformational energy operates whether you want it to or not. You cannot turn off your individuation. It radiates through your presence, your questions, and your unique way of seeing the world. This leads us to the final and most profound sign. Here's the ultimate sign that you possess one of these truly rare minds. A hallmark that Carl Jung considered the most important psychological drive of advanced consciousness. You're not just interested in personal growth. You feel magnetically pulled, compelled by an irresistible force toward what he called individuation. Jung defined individuation as the process by which a person becomes a psychological individual, that is, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. But for minds like yours, this isn't optional self-improvement or a fleeting hobby. It's a psychological imperative, as fundamental and non-negotiable as breathing. This is what I call evolutionary consciousness, and it represents the psyche's natural, powerful drive toward wholeness, authenticity, and profound psychological integration. If you possess this rare mind, you don't choose transformation. You are called to it by something far deeper than conscious will, a whisper from your very soul. Jung discovered that individuating consciousness creates several unmistakable patterns. You are repeatedly drawn to experiences that challenge your fundamental assumptions, pushing you beyond your comfort zone. Crisis periods often precede your greatest breakthroughs, acting as crucibles for profound growth. You feel restless, a deep yearning, when life becomes too comfortable or predictable. You naturally seek out mentors, profound teachings, and experiences that facilitate your continuous growth. And you understand, deep in your bones, that psychological death and rebirth are not to be feared, but are absolutely necessary for authentic development and true self-discovery. Think about it in this powerful way. Anger, when suppressed, festers into corrosive resentment, but anger, when integrated and consciously channeled, becomes a burning passion for justice and positive change. Selfishness, when denied, often manifests as passive aggression or self-sabotage, but selfishness, when owned and understood, transforms into healthy self-care and the ability to establish vital boundaries. The dark traits you've been battling are, in essence, misplaced virtues. You are willing to face psychological material that others actively avoid, courageously confronting your own shadow. You recognize intricate patterns and cycles in your own development, seeing the grand design. You trust the transformational process, even when it's agonizingly painful, because you know it leads to greater wholeness. And you feel a sacred responsibility for becoming your most authentic self, not just for you, but for the world. Jung famously wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Your rare mind doesn't just understand this intellectually. You feel it as a sacred responsibility to yourself and to the collective human psyche. The profound challenge is that this individuating drive can feel overwhelmingly lonely. You are becoming something new, something that doesn't yet fully exist in ordinary consciousness, pioneering psychological territories that others can't even imagine. But Jung discovered something truly beautiful about this loneliness. Individuating consciousness eventually transcends the need for external validation. You begin to find profound companionship within your own authentic self. The integrated totality of your conscious and unconscious potentials, a true homecoming. If you recognize yourself as someone called to become who you truly are, declare it below. You choose conscious evolution. So, there you have it. The 8 unmistakable signs that your mind operates on a frequency that 99% of people simply cannot understand. If you recognized yourself in these patterns, remember what I said at the beginning. Your mind is processing information in ways that most people literally cannot comprehend. But now, you understand why. You are not broken, difficult, or weird. You are what Carl Jung called an individuated consciousness, someone whose psychological development represents the next magnificent stage of human evolution. Your ability to think in dimensional layers, to speak the language of symbols, to courageously integrate shadow aspects, to experience a profound existential homesickness, to perform psychological archaeology, to embrace paradoxical thinking, to catalyze transformation in others, and to surrender to the sacred individuation process. These are not problems to be solved. They are profound gifts to be honored, cherished, and wielded with purpose. Jung viewed successful empathic development as essential not just for individual well-being, but for humanity's collective emotional advancement toward more authentic, heartfelt human connection. Jung wrote, "The empath, who successfully integrates their gifts while fiercely protecting their authenticity, becomes a beacon for others seeking to reconnect with their own emotional truth. They prove that sensitivity and strength can, and indeed must, beautifully coexist. The question is, what will you do with this profound understanding?" Jung spent his life studying consciousness like yours because he recognized that individuated minds are the very agents of collective psychological transformation. Your journey toward authenticity isn't just personal, it's contributing to the grand evolution of human consciousness itself. Welcome to the One. Your real journey has only just begun. If you want to go deeper into Jung's profound insights about psychological transformation, be sure to explore my video, When the Narcissist Realizes the Empath Has Learned Their Language, where we unravel how individuated consciousness courageously responds to psychological manipulation. And if this video has illuminated your unique, rare mind, consider subscribing to this channel and sharing it with someone else who might desperately need to hear this empowering message. Sometimes, the most individuated act is helping another person recognize their own profound psychological uniqueness. The world needs your rare mind, your unique vision, and your profound depth. Jung understood this, and now, hopefully, so do you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next dimension of understanding.